Oh.
Of vision.
Excuse me.
Just survive.
You know, you look like your head fell on the cheese dip back in 1957. You're okay. This one, real fucking ugly.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Micron podcast. I'm Ryan from coldsploitation.com, and I'm joined with my co-host Martin.
I should have, if I could, if I thought ahead of time, I would have bought a kazoo. But
Yeah.
I forgot.
My son has a kazoo. I could have pulled it out for it, but
There you go.
in post, I'll throw some
Kazoos
bad Jurassic Park in the background, right?
That's on a harmonica, though.
Yeah, I know, but it would have been great.
Oh, you know what? We should have done on harmonica because that ties into what we're doing today.
It's true. It's true. Harmonica would be nice. We are celebrating today our 300th episode of Blood and Black Rum podcast. It's a milestone. Can't believe we've come this far. And we've done it in about 10 years. So
30 episodes a year.
30 episodes a year, which is pretty damn good considering, well, I guess it could be good or bad. When we first started out, we were like cranking them out every week. We were just like, boom, boom, boom. Let's just do one every week.
We were young and having fun.
That's right. 10 years ago. Yeah.
Had a lot of bullets in us. Now, old and gray. And COVID took a lot of different. First COVID year really took a lot out of us. We didn't, we were on hiatus for months.
That's true. Yeah, we were on hiatus for a while, and it's 10 years. Your life changes a lot, but being 30 episodes a year, that's pretty good. And we generally do the bulk of those around Halloween and Christmas time. We've had a fun run here for 300 episodes, and we're gonna call it a day. We're gonna pack it up. No.
So, Saxon Samhain.
Yeah, it does.
We got one episode in, but you know what, John? The evil eye was good enough.
That's it. Yeah, we're done. No, just kidding. No, we hope to be around for 300 more. We'll probably just keep doing it. Like doesn't really cost us that much when in the long run to be doing a podcast. Besides our time and energy, so we'll just do it until we can't anymore.
It's the one thing that keeps this friendship alive. If it were for this podcast, Ryan would have abandoned me by year 4.
Yeah. Well, one thing we wanted to do before we got into the episode, and yes, also should note, Saxon Samhain will return next week for our Halloween's episodes and season. We did want to get this in, on the 300th episode, so celebrate the birthday. So it's kind of blockading our Saxon week, or Saxon month, I should say. But we wanted to take this break right before we actually go into the episode itself, because you do have a movie for you. It's just that generally when we do these anniversaries, I think we did it for the 200th episode as well. We kind of try to take some time to reminisce, go back through the years, talk about some of the things that are mean the most to us on the show. So what are some of your favorites that we've done in the either the recent past or late past? What comes to mind?
So I'm going to kind of try to mention some of the things that we didn't really cover, because I know, forever and always, I will always praise doing She's All That, because it's just a lot of fun when we go into territory where the podcast wasn't meant to go. But I think one that we didn't really talk too much about, but I think is a lot of fun, and one that I had a lot of fun doing was our Scream retrospective and marathon. That was a lot of fun, and I think if you're somebody, especially now with MK1, with the DLC coming out soon, and that Ghostface being one of the guest characters, what a right time if you're going to spend $60 on that DLC. Don't. It's not that good of a fighting game. But when it drops down in price, go for it because you can, play as Ghostface. And I think, one of the best months of content that we put out was when we did our Scream retrospective, when we did Scream 1 through 4. So check that out.
Yeah.
What's one for you? What's something for you?
You know what? I think one of our better episodes is probably The Exorcist Believer, because even though I think that neither of us enjoyed that movie, I do think we got a lot of mileage out of talking about it and laughing at some of the things that David Gordon Green put into that movie. So I do like that one. Again, that was a Halloween episode from last year. We did that for Halloween when it came out. And that was a pretty fun time, I think. Both saw it in theaters too. So we had, because now a lot of times we don't watch the movies together. That used to be a big thing as part of the show as well, as watching the movies together. And that's kind of, as we've gotten older and I have kids now, and it just doesn't always fit in the schedule to watch them together. So, the times that we actually do get together and watch movies, those are fun times too. So I'll say Exorcist Believer. Go back and listen to that one and have a laugh with us about that trilogy that never came to be, or at least the David Gordon Green version of that trilogy that will never exist anymore, because quickly they were like, cut that. We're not continuing on that trajectory.
Did they decide not to continue?
Yeah. Well, David Gordon Green will not direct the next one, which is like what, Redeemer or something like that. I don't think they have or Deceiver or something, whatever the fuck they call it. I don't think that they have. Yeah, they don't have David Gordon Green anymore, but I think they're still getting someone else to actually like direct what was the idea behind it. So.
What the hell's going on over there at Blumhouse?
Yeah, no one knows.
It's just like, are they run by Warner Brothers now?
It's just a mess over there now.
It's all like they have an idea and they do it shittily, and they're like, well,
pretty
we gotta
much
scrap it and start from scratch. I would say another fun episode to check out would be it's not like I'm saying it's like a best episode, but it's one that I think back of fondly because it's a very fun movie. Would be when we did for 80s Action Month. Originally for the first go, we did Invasion USA.
Mm-hmm.
That's like one of the Chuck Norris films that we've done on this podcast that I look back pretty fondly at. And I think you should check it out because that movie's a lot of fun compared to the rest of the Chuck films we've done so far, like Missing in Action and Delta Force. So definitely give that a go.
I'm going to say, just because it was so long and arduous to get the episode out, Roadhouse back in 2022, episode 221, Roadhouse is again part of our Red Hot 80s Action Summer. That one was a year in the making because we planned on doing it for the first Red Hot 80s Action Summer, never came about. And then I do believe that there was a delay actually in actually doing the episode as well to get it out for Red Hot 80s Action. So it was like an arduous task to actually do that one. So Roadhouse, it's a good episode as well, but just the sheer problems that we went through and all the issues around actually doing that episode. I'm going to say that one. Go check it out.
I think finally, for like a third, would be for me. When I think back of it now, Black Christmas 2019 seems so far and so long ago, and Black Christmas and tying into the whole Saxon Samhain theme. Black Christmas 2019 is really interesting to think back on, and how kind of fucking weird, goofy, what are we doing here misstep that was.
I think that's going to be a movie that I watched this year again because I haven't seen it since we watched it for that show.
It's been 5 years now.
Yeah,
it's hard to believe that it's been that long.
I know. I kind of want to go back and watch it again and see what I think about it now. Watching, because I kind of remember, like, I thought it was okay. Like, I didn't think it was like anything great, but I thought it was, kind of okay. Whereas a lot of people are up in arms about it, but I thought, like, if it didn't, I felt like if it didn't have the Black Christmas name, it would have been like an okay movie. but having the Black Christmas name and like doing something completely different, just for the showmanship of having that name, was a little bit weird to me.
I also think Suspiria 2018. Check that review out too, because that's not something. That's also been something that's long gone, and it's something that we got a lot of mileage on that discussion out of. Yeah, that's a film I'd be interested to rewatch now, because I think I kind of would have more of a patience for it now than I probably did then.
Another episode that I'm going to highlight here, we'll probably end this one, end our look back, but another one that, I don't know specifically about the content within the episode, if it's like a really good discussion, but one that I think is kind of funny is Happy Death Day to You, where we picked it as our Valentine's Day episode and then found out, oh fuck, there's no Valentine's Day in it at all. It like literally does not take place around Valentine's Day at all. And so we were like, yeah, we'll do it anyway, right? We've already got it docked, so we'll do Happy Death Day to You. But yeah, it was meant to be a Valentine's Day episode and ended up not really having much tying in with that. So you know what? That's what happens when you kind of go week to week and you're like, yeah, let's just do it. Well,
that's what happens too, because if you remember when we did the Django episode, we originally were going to do Django the Bastard. And we watched Django the Bastard just for you to me to remind you after we got done watching it. We already did Django the Bastard.
Yep. That was another one. Yep. I know. Well, we've had a lot of fun times.
Do you know what our first Carpenter film that we've done on the podcast was? It'll surprise you.
Let's see. Trying to think back now. First Carpenter movie that we actually did. I don't know. What was it?
Pretty sure, as I'm scrolling through real quick, pretty sure it's Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, that was episode 81. So I don't know if we did any. You're right, because we didn't actually get into the Halloween series until later, because we didn't do those. So I think you may be right on that.
Yeah, I just scrolled through episode 81, Big Trouble in Little China.
That was the first time we
did a Carpenter film.
Yeah.
Which is a good episode to watch, because that was your first time ever seeing Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah. 81 would have been, that's basically season 3 of the show, if you're counting seasons. So it took us a while to actually get into any John Carpenter at that point.
But to be fair, that's a streak of some good shit we had right there for like a little while. We had Night of the Living Dead, Dread, the 2012 version, great. Atomic Blonde, what a great movie that was. Mako, one of the worst episodes we ever did. The Mangler, which by the way, I think we mentioned before on our retrospectives, but The Mangler, please check out. Please listen to that episode. What a great, fun movie that is, with one of Ryan's best intros.
That's right.
And then Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, we hope that you've kind of come with us throughout the years as we've continued our podcast here and gone through a lot of different changes, gone through various changes to how we actually record the episodes. We used to record, like I said, we used to watch the movies together. We used to record together. We don't do that anymore. We record separately with different microphones now. I use different editing equipment to edit our episodes. So it's kind of interesting to look back and see. And especially, I think if you go back to our early episodes, there's probably a little bit more rough around the edges, where we were kind of still feeling out some things. Like, again, we talk about this kind of every now and then, but it's kind of funny to look back and think there was at one point we did an episode on Fallout, the video game, which we never do video games anymore. We've only ever done movies besides that. We did
Evil Dead, Ash vs. Evil Dead. The first 2 episodes is we did a Wes Craven tribute where we just kind of talked about random Wes Craven films after he passed away.
Yeah, we did an episode on 15 horror movies for Halloween, so we just kind of picked movies that we like to watch for Halloween and did that. So that was kind of interesting.
Our one Riff Tracks follow along is the RoboCop 2010s film. So you know.
That's our 100th episode though too.
No, that's the thing. We did.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's right. I forgot. When's the RoboCop follow along then? The audio commentary. I forget. It's not even the 50th. It was just something that we did, like as an offshoot. We were just like, let's do it. I don't know why. Episode 74 it was. We did an audio commentary, so which is interesting. And looking back at that too, I don't know if we did it that well. Considering, no, I'm just saying, like, not only like it was hard to sync. I remember distinctively having internet issues when we were trying to watch the movie along, while doing that episode. So like, I'm not sure that we did all that well, but I would actually like to go back to doing, I would like to try it again at some point, like another riff track sort of thing with a movie that we know pretty well. Whereas like this RoboCop, we hadn't seen it since we saw it in theater. So the audio commentary, it's kind of hard when you're just like watching it again for the first time and you're trying to like riff on the spot about something that you really don't have that much, knowledge of what's coming. So that was it. Interesting.
Some of the nice, most publicity you got too was for episode 11, Troll 2 got retweeted by the lady who was the creepy witch lady in it.
That's true. Yep, yeah. We did. Another one I think is kind of funny to point out is if you go all the way back to episode, what is it? Episode 4, when we saw the Vacation remake. Is that? No, actually, I'm sorry. It was episode 3. It was the regular Vacation, original Vacation. My wife Sarah's on that one, which is she's never made a reappearance. So one episode for her was enough.
And that was recorded at my place.
It was, and we kind of just sat around in a circle and did the recording. So,
which, by the way, what a great start. We're going to be doing a bunch of like Italian films and like giallos and spaghetti westerns. Episode 2, Terminator Genesis. Episode 3 through 4.
Yep. Covering all the vacations,
which we did the one time we crammed in. I think I lie.
Episode 6 was where we got European Vacation and Vegas Vacation. We did them together.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can only say so much, but also too. Also want to say thanks to like J Movie Talks podcast because one of our best episodes, I think, too, when I look back, is our Friday the 13th parts 1 through 3 that we did for that a long time ago, like 8 years ago. Now.
Yeah, it was quite a ways back.
So when and it's not on our archive list of episodes because it wasn't technically for us. So when you see our Friday the 13th and where we pick up on episode 4, part 4, you're like, what the hell? What's going on here? Well, that's why.
Yeah,
we did 1 through 3 for him.
Yeah, so technically this is 301, but but for actual Blood and Black Rum podcast, it's 300. So again, thank you to J Movie Talk podcast for allowing us to do that episode on Friday the 13th, 1 through 3, and kind of stretch our, give us a chance to do something a little bit different. Because again, we generally do not do multiple films in an episode. It might be something to think about moving forward, or like if we want to do, if we have movies where we're just like, I don't think we can get a full episode out of, it might be something to think about. A lot of these things are something to think about, especially for listeners too. If you want to see us do something a little bit different, let us know. We're open to different suggestions. I'm open to doing audio commentaries again. I'm open to trying out, like, if you want like a little listicle, you could do a little listicle too. So it's open to interpretation, but I do really like just taking one movie and, working through it and talking about it throughout and, spending a nice hour on discussing it. Even if it's something like the movie that we have today, that's been kind of beaten to death and talked about over and over again. Sometimes it's okay to just take a movie that people have seen and loved and, criticized and talked about, and you just talk about all the things that you really like about it. Especially considering like when you do something like a review where you try to review the movie and like, again, something like Halloween is very difficult to review because it's just like, what do you say about it? What do you say that somebody hasn't said before? You're like, even when people who try to come up with like new recent, little critical lenses of it, like where they say like, Lori holding the key is a phallic symbol of, and stuff like that. That always resonates with me.
Trying too hard.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, I don't know what to say about it. But here today, we have an episode for you, that I think has been one in the making for a while. We've talked about it quite a bit. We've talked about this movie like in different episodes, but we've just never done it before. And so it makes a lot of sense. And there's a lot of things here in this movie that are ingrained in the podcast too, that we talk about all the time, I think. So one of them would be that it's a John Carpenter movie. And so as Martin has said, it took us like 80 episodes to get to a John Carpenter movie. But after we've done quite a few John Carpenter movies. And also we did So Creepy It's Carpenter during a Halloween season. So in our 100th episode was it our 100th?
Yes.
100th was The Thing.
Yes. 200th was Escape from New York.
Right. So it just...
And I think too, that the way we were kind of prancing about the episodes, I think this one was, especially with the theme that we established, kind of going like, all right, for our 100th episodes, we're kind of hitting the Carpenter notes. It would have been a little foolish to throw this in for like So Creepy It's Carpenter do on a one-off, because
yeah,
I think at least if you were to say like the Mount Rushmore of John Carpenter films, this film's probably up there for most people. It's going to be Memoirs of an Invisible Man, Starman, and Elvis.
I would say that. I had to register that for a second. Yeah.
Well,
Those
for
are
you,
definitely the ones.
For you, it would be this, Prince of Darkness, Vampires, because you love James Woods, and what the hell, In the Mouth of Madness.
I do. We've done most of those, and I've talked about how much I love Prince of Darkness and stuff. Yeah, you're right. So those are really big ones for me. Besides Vampires, I would definitely not call that one of my favorites for sure. But it just makes sense to us because, like I said, we did John Carpenter. We've done it for all of our other, 100 or whatever you call it, like centennial podcast episodes. And not only that, but like Martin has a big love of wrestling, kind of ingrained in his, his upbringing.
Yeah, I'm white trash.
That's right, a little white trash inclusion there. And then not only that, but it's got all of those cult film actors that we really love too, and like Keith David as well, which again, it's been someone that we've brought up in multiple different episodes previously. So I think all of that just kind of culminates into why this movie might be our 300th episode. We're talking about 1988's They Live.
Hold on.
By John Carpenter.
Stop. Do that again.
We're talking about 1988's John Carpenter's They Live. Directed by John Carpenter. Also co-written by John Carpenter and Ray Nelson. And composed by John Carpenter and the other guy that doesn't ever get recognized for his working with John Carpenter, but
Alan
also
Howarth.
does a very good job. Yeah, Alan Howarth.
You do that? Do you do that intentionally now?
Yeah, I did that one intentionally when I said They Live by John Carpenter. Director.
You gotta stop that. He literally gets paid by that.
That's a running joke too. Is just to not have John Carpenter at the beginning of the movie title.
To be fair, on the poster, it's kind of buried.
Yeah, it's kind of like set off to the side. It's like John Carpenter's They Live. You know, it's like yeah. And they've even like kind of like the kerning on the font too is almost like kind of shoved together, So they were just like, yeah, get it in there. He wants it on the poster, they said. Somebody said, well, you know what? It kind of clashes with the rest of the poster. It's, we got everything else set up. It's like, put it on there. John wants it. John's an asshole when he gets upset. So Put it on.
You know what we should? You should do for Cultsploitation. You should go through all the Carpenter movie posters and rank them by the font size of John Carpenter's name on them.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, like which ones are the most prominent, which ones aren't, and then also do a little deep dive and think and see like how does John Carpenter actually feel about those movies? Like, did he want his name to be smaller on some of those? You know.
Is he looking back and going like, ugh?
Right, like The Ward or Ghosts of Mars? Was he like, make it small, you know, just doing it for the paycheck here, make it small. Yeah, that'd be a fun one to do. All right, before we really get into They Live, though, we've also got to do the next segment that we always do on the show, which is what we call Beer Talk. That's right. Though we are named Blood and Black Rum Podcast, we don't generally drink hard liquor on here. We have done it a couple times. I think we've had liquor on the show once or twice where we kind of talked about it. But for the most part, we are beer drinkers and beer reviewers and beer connoisseurs. So generally we do beer. The name itself comes from Blood and Black Lace, of course. So we just did a Bob movie. But, all right, so what do we got on the show for today? Also, I do want to point out, too, another thing we talk about, like being historians of the podcast and trying to remember the movies that we've done. I think even what's a little bit harder is to remember the beers that we've done and to try not to repeat the beers that we've done on the show previously. That's after 300 episodes of having different beers, 300 different types of beer on the show. That gets fucking hard to try to be a historian of like what you've had. So I actually do now keep track of it on my app, as Martin's requested, have me when I check in to the beer that I'm having to write down that it's part of the podcast beer that we're having. So,
well, not only because of that, because also you used to include it in the title. You know?
I did. Yeah, I did.
You don't anymore. Like,
I include it in the show notes, but not in the title.
Yeah. So today I got the beer. It's my turn to get we're communal here every other week, you know, every episode, someone's turn to get the beer, you know. So it's my turn this week. And I got one that I've been looking forward to because it's one that got posted not that long ago, right before the end of summer. One of their last summer beers they'd be kind of releasing. And it's a brewery we've had a billion times on this podcast. At this point, might as well be sponsored by them. But we're not.
Right.
So I can't legally say that. But we're not. We're just fans of the product. And today we have from Fishkill, New York, Sloop Brewing's Pineapple Juice Fruited IPA. And because it's a fruited IPA, it doesn't mean it's kind of like it's the fruit is kind of mixed in with it, you know, to give a little extra oomph. And Sloop, if you don't know by now from the previous episodes that you listened to, really specialize in the whole NIPA world. So very citrusy, very, you know, rich flavored, fruity IPAs. So pineapple, I'm pretty curious. I love pineapple. I was curious to see how this would go. And I'm disappointed. It's not bad, but it's not anything that I would ever go out of my way to get out of. It's not, to me, very pineapple-y. It tastes like a NIPA, kind of like the juice bomb itself, but a little bit more watered down, more rosiny, more riney. The pineapple juice aspect of it is more like pineapple rind than actual pineapple juice flavor. So I'm pretty disappointed by this. Is it like drinkable? Yeah. Is it not? It's not bad, but from what I was expecting to have, I'm greatly disappointed. I was expecting it to be like a NIPA, but very bold, very like dull pineapple juice flavor, like, you know, liquid out of the fucking can pineapple. And I don't get that. It's just very subtle, very light. Yeah, it's not. This one's not for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with you there. I enjoyed this one. I think that it's pretty good. In the recent past, Sloop has been kind of going in a different direction from like what they've been doing before. seems like they're trying to branch out a little bit. They're trying to be a little bit more consumer friendly. They don't want it to be such a like, I don't know. They're just trying to kind of branch out a little bit and get some people that they might not necessarily suck into, the types of beers that they're making, the IPA. So they've been really marketing their lager, which we did in a recent episode. They've been making some more of their like bomb flavors that they've been marketing, and like they've even changed up like the can labels and how they present themselves. And so I think like this pineapple juice IPA is sort of like, it's kind of weird because it does sit in a weird area between like their Juice Bomb series of hazy IPAs that they've been doing and like pineapple flavors. And it's like, what's the difference, right? Like you've been doing Juice Bombs, you've been doing these different hop varietals in your beers. What's the difference now by adding pineapple to it? Well, I don't know if there really is. I think they're just trying to be a little bit more, conscientious of how they're marketing. And so saying it has pineapple in it is kind of like a invitation to some people. So I do think that they're kind of doing an interesting thing. This Snipa that they've made, I think is really good. It has like that, background Sloop trademark flavor to it with that cryo mosaic and cryo citra. So both of those, mosaic and citra, they're like very
Rosy.
They are, but I would also say that they're probably one of the most common Naipa hop varietals that you're going to see nowadays. The Citra, I feel like, makes it its way into everything because it's just like, you want something juicy, Citra, throw it in there. And it's just kind of that easy thing. So I would say that this base beer, like the Naipa itself, is pretty good. It's pretty standard for Sloop. And then they've added that little bit of pineapple juice to it to give it like that additional juiciness, sort of like that tropical flavor to it. I would say that the element of pineapple doesn't necessarily stand out a whole lot, but what it does do is what Martin said, it adds that sort of like bitter, rindy flavor to it, which some people may like and some people may not like. I kind of equate it to like sometimes when you add orange to a beer, that rindiness of the orange can be overpowering and can actually give it like a very unpleasant bitterness that like is kind of like biting into an orange rind. So I can see how this pineapple beer has that same sort of rindiness that may turn off some people. For me, I do enjoy it though. I had the first one. I'm sipping on the second one right now. I'm enjoying it. I think it's pretty solid, but I can see how it might not hit with some people, especially if they're not that rindy bitterness is not something that's really like agreeable to your palate. You may not like this as much. So I think it's a good beer for me, although I do agree it may be hit or miss for people. May not hit the mark for some. So interesting beer though. Glad I got to check it out because I've been eyeing this one at the store and I just haven't grabbed it.
It's not, like I said, it's not bad. It's probably more a failure of expectations for me because I was expecting it to be more booming with the pineapple because that's what I was kind of looking for. And the fact that it's not is probably why for me. It's
right.
So just mid-tier.
All right, so let's get into They Live. Let's do it. And hopefully you weren't expecting anything, extremely over the top for our 300th episode because we're gonna do, what we normally do, but we're gonna do it with panache as we normally do it. So, so let's talk about it. They Live from 1988. John Carpenter's They Live, I should say.
Thank you.
I actually just recently saw this movie for the first time, and I say recently, but it's been like probably a year or two. Whenever the 4K came out was the first time that I saw this movie. And, I remember liking it when I watched it the first time. And again, watching it again this time, I did end up liking it quite a bit. The thing about They Live is that it has resonated so much into popular culture. Not only with the literal dialogue and phrases that people will quote, but also the idea of sunglasses, putting them on and seeing something in those sunglasses, like aliens or something. I'm pretty sure it's been parodied on like Treehouse of Horror from The Simpsons. I know it was parodied in Are You Afraid of the Dark? There's a whole episode in that where they basically have like these magic glasses that they get from like the recurring magician on the show. And they start seeing like these aliens throughout. So it's very much like basically a young adult version of They Live. It's just kind of resonated and made its way into popular culture where I feel like even if you've never seen the movie, you at least know what it's about and basically the overarching theme of it. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, my first taste of They Live in the popular zeitgeist is the South Park episode with the cripple fight when Jimmy debuts between Jimmy and Timmy. And Matt and Trey, like, shot for shot, did a remake of the fight scene in this film. That's what kind of girded me to eventually seek out this film when I couldn't, like, in college and, like, sit down and go through my exploratory phase in films that were on TV, because it's not like They Live was ever on TV.
No.
But a lot of the imagery and a lot of the things from this film are stuff that even as a kid that I knew were from this film because of how saturated at the time it was in the popular zeitgeist. I think this film has kind of, like we like to talk about and kind of bring up, has totally kind of fallen out of the cultural zeitgeist. I think if you were to show some of the imagery and stuff that we as millennials and Gen Xers would be able to notice and resonate with from this film, I think if you were to show like some of the imagery and things that we know to a Gen Z, they would have no idea what the fuck's going on. Not their fault, but I mean, again, it's just kind of falling out of favor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not as often talked about now. I do think that there is a particular time period of They Live being a very politically charged commentary. And again, I think that part of that is it was obviously written for a particular time period, but even watching now, there are certainly, it's not like you can watch this now and be like, wow, that's like really strange. I don't really, like those things are lost on me. It's just, I actually think it probably resonates more now, even than maybe John Carpenter meant it to resonate back in 88 to the 90s in terms of how much further, I should say, we've come from Reaganomics.
The correct answer is it wasn't just Reagan that was the issue and Reaganomics. It's just neoliberalism in general, which, for those of you who aren't politically and economically savvy, when somebody refers to neoliberalism, they're not referring to like goddamn Democrats and liberals. They're referring to neoliberalism as an economic policy, which is something that since the 70s, Democrats and Republicans have gladly, hand in hand, hopped all aboard on this whole free enterprise, free trade, boom or bust. If the rich succeed, then that means everyone's going to succeed type of way. That's not just Reagan. That was Clinton. That was Bush, H.W. Bush, Walker Bush, Obama.
Right.
It
definitely,
even till this day, 40 years later, 50 years later, it's still a thing. So
yeah, I mean, neoliberalism definitely still works off of Reaganomics in that way of like top down, wealthy get the money, they'll spread it, right? It just trickles down. And as we've seen time and again, no, it does not. It does not trickle down. It doesn't even trickle at all. It basically gets stuck in the drain and, no one gets anything from it. So
it is interesting to think about. Like, if you go back to like when like this film came out and by like 88, like Reagan's assault on like unions was full in place and unions were being knocked out and the working class was really starting to, to feel the pains. by 88, they had felt the pains of like his, economic policies. And now you translate that now to today, it's like, oh, what's a union? Well, that's a fucking dirty word. Don't fucking say union. Why would you want to be part of a union, you piece of shit? Like, so the 50-year project of like, dismantling what, was fought, in the late 19th century, early 20th century was gone. And you're starting to see a revival in that. But it's just kind of funny to see like, oh, you thought in 1988 it couldn't get any worse? It does. Yeah, it does. And also, too, you can tell this movie wasn't a box office hit because if it was, maybe Herbert Walker doesn't get elected right after Reagan.
Well, yeah, I mean, in this movie kind of envisions like a near future after 88 where in the 90s, basically the rich are getting richer. And not only that, they are they're working together with aliens to effectively create this lull in the senses of most of the public where the aliens are doing their thing. Rich people are getting richer so they don't think about it. And then the aliens will eventually take over. And so
it is, as I say, it is an interesting plot because like the film kind of with the alien culture and the greed, it's all like they talk about things like in the 80s that would have been like new and cool, like global warming and like, resources being abused and, burnt up. And it's like,
it's all there.
It's
all there and they live.
I mean, as I say, it's been there. And not only that, but I mean, the idea that, the aliens are doing this to basically turn us into, use us as a means of resources and we're like the third world to them. That's a really kind of interesting idea that Carpenter goes on. Like he's basically, that's a subtext and like, well, it's not even subtext. It's right there.
Yeah. I mean, basically spoken.
Yeah, spoken for. I mean, that's a pretty interesting idea. That's really cool, especially for like a sci-fi film.
Mm-hmm.
Like this idea of like, well, you guys are cattle for the aliens, but it's not just that. And with the actual global implications at the time, I think that's really cool. I think that that's a really nifty idea that he has.
Yeah, I mean, and we should, without giving all the benefit to Carpenter and his co-writer Ray Nelson. I mean, this is based off of the short story by Ray Nelson, which I've not read, but so I can't kind of speak to how well it adheres to that short story. But it is a really interesting idea that I think again has resonated for a long time. In that there's that whole idea of subliminal messaging. So like, look inward at your ads, that you're bombarded with, which have not, from 88 until now, it's not like ads have gone away. They have become much more prevalent, which I just literally saw a post. Yeah, exactly. I just saw a post the other day of somebody who was filling up gas in their car and there was a fucking ad on the gas nozzle that they were filling up their car with. So it's, it's not like ads have become less intrusive as we've gotten away from like cable TV. No, they've gotten even more intrusive because they bombard you at every step of your life.
Not only that, the internet. If you're not tech savvy, like you don't know how to put fucking uBlock on a browser, like
right.
If you, I use Firefox personally because I value my privacy and tracking data, and I use uBlock too to also like block like everything out, like.
Go to bloodandblackrumpodcast.spotify.com to get your free Firefox trial. No, that's what you sounded like right there. You sound like you were writing an ad for them. I value my privacy. I use Firefox.
Well, I'm just saying though. Well, because over the years of like, because when you hear about like browsers that people use, what do you hear? Google Chrome,
has been infiltrated by ads.
And not only that, but they're selling your data to like ad companies to like curate and like the whole algorithms the algorithms that are out there on like YouTube, Facebook, all these platforms are harvesting your information and data to curate advertisements for you to buy shit. It's so creepy and dystopian. Like this idea of just like, oh well, like for instance, today, all you have to do is not even text your friend, I need to buy you a new car. You say it close enough to your phone, it picks it up, and it's like, hey, go on Facebook. You need a new car. Stop down at, Mangino Chevrolet. Buy a new Chevy for this deal. And you're like, what? And like, it's just uncanny, like, and creepy as all fucking hell. And
and it's
so intrusive.
It's funny because in They Live, in 1988, ads were a little bit less intrusive. And so, when John Carpenter is, when Roddy Piper, he initially gets the sunglasses and he's, got them on and he's looking throughout the city, and you see him kind of scanning down the street, and there's the magazine newsstand there that he's got.
What's a newsstand in 20?
Exactly. And like the only things that are really portraying ads at that point are like magazines, maybe a billboard on the side of the building. And now, if you kind of think about that, like that would be even, basically you couldn't turn around without seeing a fucking subliminal message in the sunglasses at this point. You'd basically look at a screen, it's a subliminal message. Look at somebody's phone, it's a subliminal message. So it's interesting to kind of look at it now and say like, you know what? In 1988, they had it pretty good and They Live, right? Like, at least it wasn't that intrusive.
Well, you also think about it too, like one thing that we forget is like they talk about like Cable 54. Yes. Cable's a brand new thing in the late 80s. And like you had to be the richest of the rich, to afford cable back then. This idea of having multiple different channels with different like forms of entertainment, and thus with that entertainment comes the advertising. Like one of the worst things to happen to society is the 24-hour news cycle with CNN, because what does that generate? The need to create news, fear, and advertisement to keep people's eyes on it. So like,
I do agree with you there. In 1988's They Live, the cable television, especially, as it shows Cable 54, that is probably the way that most people would have had their subliminal messaging delivered, because everybody was watching like 3 channels. So you switch, maybe you're not watching Cable 54, maybe you're watching another channel. You're still getting all of those subliminal messages. It was so much easier to distill that content into like, they're going to be watching these 3 things. Now it's harder to distill like your advertising for like, oh, well, what if it's going to be on Instagram versus what if it's going to be on Netflix versus what if it's going to be, on Nickelodeon,
Twitter.
You have to kind of think about all of those different ad channels and deliveries. And I'm sure there's all kinds of like PhDs on like ad marketing. Like where does it go best? What kinds of ads would be, what kind of meminess is better for Reddit ads versus stuff you're going to see on TV. So it's all, it boils down to being, I agree with John Carpenter and They Live. It's all bullshit. Let's fucking take it out. It's
disgusting.
It's disgusting. And like, so basically that is in a nutshell what They Live is kind of like addressing here. And it's interesting because the movie kind of opens up and it's Roddy Piper's character who doesn't really have a name, and he kind of gets a name Nada, which, again,
mentioned like twice,
right, is like not, it means nothing, right? So it's, it's kind of your everyman character. And Roddy Piper's kind of that guy who's like, you know what, I don't have a job right now, but I'm looking for it, and I'm really looking for the American dream. I'm just here, and I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to, whatever you're going to give me, I'll be understanding and, appreciative of the job that I'm given, and I'll do it and make some money and hopefully be able to, live and prosper in this world. And, then you have the foil to that, Keith David's character, Frank, who's basically, when he first meets him, he basically goes on a rant. And he's like, these fucking people, they close all these steel mill factories and they want us to be, happy about it while they rake in all the dough and close all their, their sites. And so you have those 2 different worldviews of
which is also too like, still very resonant. Still hits. It's like, it's like, oh, what happened to the Rust Belt? Long gone.
Right.
They,
Right. And you still have, whether we call it the executives or CEOs or whoever is in charge of companies making more and more money all the time, basically hoarding it like dragons, trying to figure out how they can just keep more and more and be the most successful at keeping money. And, while things close, people can't survive and people can't afford to live on what they're working with. And so that's kind of what They Live sets up right at the beginning of the movie. And you have those two opposing viewpoints. Roddy Piper, who's like, you know what? The American dream's still here and I'm going to find it. And Keith David, who's like, good luck, because you know what? You take what you get. I got wife and kids and I got to just do what I got to do. But I know that things are shit and, it's not going to get better. And so what do you think when you first meet Roddy Piper? You think like, oh, this motherfucking naive guy, or how do you feel about him when you first meet him?
I don't really have an opinion. I don't think he's I don't think there's enough there to really be distrustful or just, like him one way or the other. He's just kind of there. He's just
right. And he's again, like the whole idea of him having a name like Nada, nothing, is like he just is like a stand-in for any old person. Like
he originally shows up like a hobo, just like he's like hoboing, But no, I mean, like,
I think I prefer that he's not a hobo. No, not because I prefer, but I think like it would give too much of like a particular bias right away for a viewer.
Well, he kind of is though, because he's walking around on rail tracks, with his.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like if you were
1980s equivalent of a bindle stick.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you were to give him like a literal bindle, like a Marx Brothers movie or something, I feel like that would have a little bit of a bias attached to it for.
Well, I mean, like it's just weird because like that the one part I have kind of a problem with is like it's like if I just work hard enough, we'll get there. Don't worry. I believe in America. This Canadian immigrant says, like, and then he quickly falls down a rabbit hole of conspiracy. And stuff. Like that part for me doesn't quite work because it's like we don't really see a part where that like break in the American dream happens. I think it happens too quick and too suddenly for that to hit home. Because I think that's also part of like the messaging that Carpenter's trying to do in this incredibly, and as he would say, overtly political film. I think the fact that like Nada, his worldview shifts so rapidly and so quickly kind of hinders the fact that originally when we see him, he's like, no, I believe in the American dream. And then the cops show up and beat down Shantytown, and he's like, I gotta put the glasses on. I see everything. It's all garbage, Like it would have been better to see like it, like be like there be build up there for his for the American dream for him to be broken.
Like I remarked on to you, basically the infiltration of the homeless shelter is basically like what we see in California or any of those society areas where
just another day in LA.
Yeah, the goal is to basically say, oh, homeless people are sleeping on this bench. Well, then let's make it harder for them to sleep on that bench. It's the laughable element of like, you know what? These people are just trying to live. Let's make it tougher. Because that's ultimately when you say like, let's get rid of homeless shelters. Let's make it so that homeless people can't go to these particular areas. It's what you're doing. You're taking people that are down on their luck. They don't, for whatever reason, there's a lot of reasons to be homeless. It doesn't necessarily mean you're on drugs, something like that. And they basically make it harder for them to just survive. And that's kind of what that whole infiltration reminds me of is like, these people they have this nice encampment. They're not hurting anybody. They're literally living on the outskirts of the city where you can see like the specter looming of all the skyscraper buildings where it's like, oh, look at all that nice opulence of people in their penthouses in the fucking 30th floor of that skyscraper while we're living down here in the dust.
Which you're constantly reminded of through the TV commercials.
Right.
They're constantly.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Pumping
opulence
those
of
ads,
like,
yes.
do you want to get your nails done?
Well,
You can
yeah.
have your really long nails and eat this fucking cheese. You know, you don't need a toothpick. You've got your long nail. It's pretty fucking funny. But yeah, you have this whole idea, you know, there's that whole like opulence that's occurring outside of your sphere. And yet you're the problem for just making an encampment and, you know, maybe getting like a cup of stew, like, you know, fucking, Oliver Twist, you know.
Hey, Sam, what's
Yeah.
the
You know, and that's the problem. So we've got to go infiltrate this. So and of course, and they live, that's all couched in like the metaphor, right? The people that are doing the infiltration and stuff, they know about the aliens.
Well,
And-
that's also the little shanty town in Police Story 1 where Jackie Chan comes flying down the hill going Tong Chui, Tong Chuo, Tong Tong Dino.
Right.
You know. Great.
Yeah.
I was gonna say no, you are right though, because it's I think it's kind of harder to understand because again, like even though he's homeless, like there's still these temp agencies that are hiring for work and looking for people that not as able to go to that which you get to see of like him looking for a job and like, nope, we can't find you a job or whatever. Where today it's like if you were to try to find a job, like you can't just walk into McDonald's and be like, I want a job. It's like, did you apply online?
Yeah.
I didn't apply online. Well, you need to go apply online. I don't have a computer. You know.
Yeah.
Like it's something that like a lot of people don't think about, like the logistics behind that. Like if you don't have an address, you don't have a bank account, you don't have a phone.
The reciprocity of being poor, right?
Yeah. Like you can't get like, you know, it's like, well, just get a job. It's like, well, if I don't have a home, I don't have an address, you know, I don't have like, you know, no. Well, what job these days in 2024 are paying you in paycheck too? It's all direct deposit. So if you can't, you know, get a bank, you can't have a job,
Right.
you know. So, you know, like just that distance out now, like, you know, 40 years into the future is it's, you know, it's sad to see that where it's like, yeah, this is still a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough like theme, and I think that They Live does a really good job of showcasing that. Like I said, you get the looming element of the skyscrapers. You have the commercials that you see multiple times throughout of just like excess, you know, nails. I think there's one of like a lady in a dress, like, you know, like dresses, fashion show dresses and stuff like that. All of those things are kind of like comical to someone who's going to a homeless encampment to get like just a meal, right? Like you don't care about that. You don't care about that shit at all. You're not even worried about, you know, what those things are in your life. And so it sets that up. And then later on, obviously Roddy Piper's character finds the sunglasses and finds out, hey, the people that are actually, you know, running the show are either aliens, you know, those are the executives in power, or they're people that the aliens have installed to run the show for them and basically not think about what's going on in the background, what the aliens are doing. You know, if the aliens are basically terraforming Earth for themselves, like, don't think about that because we're giving you lots and lots of your so-called money that you think so highly of on Earth, to basically just not worry about everything else. And, you know, you'll step on people lower than you in the lower classes because you're getting the good stuff. And that's ultimately They Live's main theme and metaphor that it carries out throughout most of the movie. And, you know, you basically have one person or a group of people really who find out about this and then decide that they're going to band together to try to stop that from happening.
Who knew John Carpenter was Karl Marx incarnate?
Yeah, right.
like
yeah.
Like, oh, the proletarian revolution's coming. Is like, you know, all we have to do is dismantle the oppression of the bourgeoisie, you know, and to see what's going on, we just have to wear the glasses to see how we're all being rat fucked in. We need to come together as the proletariat and overthrow the bourgeois.
Basically.
Who knew? Literally, this man was the second coming of Marx and Engels.
I know. And like, there's even that whole element of like, no, we need to be violent. We need to step up and do. No, that's not working. What we need to do is just get along right now. Just go along to get along. And eventually we'll be able to do that uprising that you want. But right now, just show up to your jobs. Make sure you look like you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing, and
punch in and go home.
Yep. So yeah,
which is true. Which is true because the
most effective comes from within, right? Like, yeah. I mean, I really like the idea, and I think that the whole idea of having those sunglasses is like a nice visual representation because, again, Roddy Piper being the everyman, you get his viewpoint a lot throughout like the first 45 minutes of the movie. After he gets those sunglasses, you're kind of looking through the sunglasses with him, and you're seeing it as he sees it in the black and white, sort of like nice classic sci-fi elements to it that kind of works into it, because the movie itself is serious, but also it definitely has that sort of intentional
Carpenter wit.
Carpenter wit, and also like that cheesy sci-fi 50s angle that Carpenter really loves. The Thing obviously being inspired by 50s sci-fi horror, and then They Live itself being sort of like an interpretation of that and trying to literally show the 50s side of it with that black and white.
It's a nice invasion of the body snatchers.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't necessarily take itself seriously because there's a lot of elements to it that are kind of intentionally corny, I would say. And I think it works really well because you have that sort of, for the time, a nice contemporary element, and then also the 50s backdrop that kind of works itself. It kind of, the 50s itself were very politically charged with their own sci-fi movies, that kind of harkens back to the same metaphor that Carpenter's working with as well. So, at that point, they weren't necessarily working under a Marxist society, but they were working under the threat of nuclear apocalypse. So the same kind of holds true here, and working into that 50s angle, I think works really well for They Live. It gives it a nice, unique flavor that, again, getting that perspective from Roddy Piper's character makes you sort of another participant in what's happening.
So one of the things they joked about, even though this film does have a lot of good, at least for me, it does have a good politics to it. And it is pretty smartly written. It does come across in a kind of, now, if you were to watch it today with blind eyes, as Boomer falls down QAnon rabbit hole. Like it does kind of have that feel of like, oh yeah, your Canadian uncle, like listen, like posting on Facebook, listen here, like Alex Jonesy type shit.
I definitely think
because it has like good politics, but it's like, well, why is this happening? Instead of having like a good like reason for like, well, why is this happening? Why is this part of American society today? It leans on the alien aspect, which means Alex Jones, Banana Republic, nonsense.
Like I said, I definitely think that you could make a counter movie to They Live where everything that's happening is sort of, especially now, right? Everything that's happening is either AI generated, it's augmented reality, and
a shit show of misinformation.
Exactly.
That a boomer can't sift through.
And I think it kind of works in that regard too, is like there's a danger there too of believing everything that you think you're seeing, which maybe in 1988 wasn't necessarily as prevalent as it is today. But now, there are whole artistic, I guess I would say, artistic elements that are devoted to like kind of misinformation. AI, basically any generative fill application that you can use that can basically do any sort of like representation of humanity can be misconstrued. And I think that is not really, it's something that They Live just couldn't anticipate.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. Not only that, though, too, I think, like I said, I just think it's funny because it's just like Roddy Piper running around like, you need to put the glasses on. Like, it's like, you'll see the truth if you put your glasses on. It's like, okay, Grandpa, like, sit down and.
Yeah, and not only that, but it leads to that, the mass shooting at the end in a business office. Like it does definitely have that sort of yikes factor to it.
I do think though, one thing that kind of gets lost. I mean, it's not the film's intention because it's not part of the film. But I do think, like with what we were just talking about, I think when like people ask me, I'm sure the same with you too, as a college graduate who is not pursuing a job in the field that they got a degree in. It's like, oh, well, isn't that stupid? Don't you feel stupid for going to college and not having a degree? And like, well, using your degree, and it's like, well, at least I like know how to look up things and like, library skills, like, scrutinizing, like, what's a good source of information and what's not. And that's like one of the reasons why, like, if anyone were to ask me today, should you go to college? I'd be like, yeah, just for the simple fact of like whatever you get your degree in, you'll have better fucking knowledge and how to scrutinize and library skills on like what's a good source or what's not a good source. Film kind of tackles that because it's scrutinizing cable, but that's neither here nor there. That's more kind of a point to what we were just talking about. But that's that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the film definitely does scrutinize sort of the idea of it, like because again, you see a lot of the cable television is devoted to basically misleading and
just being garbage.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever it shows, basically, even if it's whether it be like a presidential address or just whatever commercials on. It's all devoted to being garbage that you're just consuming. And I think that kind of comes out later on in the movie, like especially during the last moments of the movie where you do see finally they've succeeded in getting their transmission out to everyone who's watching TV so that they can actually see through the whatever, guise or mask that the aliens have put up. And, you see like all of the garbage that's on television is all based on the aliens presenting it. And, everybody kind of sees through that and figures out what's going on. I think that's, it's really interesting. And to be honest with you, it's a kind of an interesting, hopeful ending in the face of Roddy Piper basically dying, and giving the middle finger and dying at the end. It's a curiously hopeful message from John Carpenter. What do you think about that? Like, do you like that it ends on that kind of upbeat, like, oh, everybody's going to find out about the aliens? Like, or do you think it's upbeat? Like maybe, it's possible
it's
nothing's going to happen about it.
It's upbeat in the sense that even though Nada dies, that his message gets out there, his revolution gets out there, which I'm fine with, but at the same time, it's kind of 4chan-y edgelordy. like the anarchists are gonna win at the end of the day. We just gotta, post some more Pepe memes. We'll be good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with it. I don't care that he dies at the end. Because Carpenter likes a good down ending. I think it's just more. It's just more kind of there, like to be like, oh yeah, what a revolutionary.
And what about Keith David's character, Frank? He didn't even want to be roped into this mess.
Which, what a man! You're telling me you're from Detroit? You have a wife and child. You've been working in the steel mills of the Rust Belt in Detroit. They're closed down. You're pissed off. So you like hobo your way to Los Angeles for work? Mm-hmm. Why? There's no work. Oh yeah, I forgot. RoboCop's too busy making, Red Foreman into paste out in Detroit at the time. Like, what are we doing here? But Keith David is great in this movie. He gives a performance of a lifetime in this movie. He's very engaging and charismatic and a lot of fun. And I think this movie is the reason why eventually he becomes the voice of the U.S. Navy, a global force for good.
Yeah, I mean, I like Keith David a lot here. And I mean, obviously, we can't talk about They Live without the extended fight sequence between the two of them where Roddy Piper basically says, put on the glasses. And, you know, in real manly fashion, they can't just have a conversation about it, of course. Keith David has to, and Roddy Piper, they have to get into a physical altercation to just get him to put on the glasses, which is a kind of, you know, it's very extended, but it's also very comical in the way that the whole thing plays out.
They beat the shit out of each other.
They really do. And what do you think about that? Do you think it goes on too long? How do you feel about it?
No, it's great. It's very visceral. It's very great. Honestly, they get Piper to do moves, and I say this too because as Ryan was talking about me being white trash and liking wrestling. One of my favorite wrestlers growing up as a kid was Roddy Piper. He was one of the first WCW wrestlers that I really loved and really got behind, like back in 1996, 97, like his bouts with Hogan. I was like, oh, this is so fucking cool. He's so cool. He's got a t-shirt that says reality with a check mark on it. Oh, he's so cool. But he does moves in that fight that he gives Keith David at one point a gut wrench suplex. Roddy Piper never gave anybody fucking gut wrench suplex in a goddamn ring. He didn't have to. He just brawled and slapped around and ran away. Was an asshole. But it's the fight still holds up really, I think, pretty well. It's very visceral. It's very like well choreographed. They both beat the living shit out of each other. Just when you think the fight's over, it keeps going. It has great parts of like when like Keith David goes to like pick Roddy up in friendship and then fucking kicks him right in the face. And then right after that, he picks him up again and Roddy goes to kick him in the balls. He's like, you dirty motherfucker. And he starts beating the shit out of him some more. It's great. I think still even, 40 years later, that fight's still fucking great. It's so just... from what the commentary was saying on the Blu-ray itself, they planned that out like for a month and a half, and you can tell because it's just really good and incredibly well done. And honestly, if Roddy Piper, though he's not that great in this film, he's serviceable, but that fight scene alone is why his casting is worth it at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they were really looking forward to that fight scene specifically because they do their own stunts for the most part, and I think that it works really well, and it has that sort of visceral quality where Carpenter doesn't really cut away that much from the action, so you kind of get that nice like set piece that it has for an extended period of time. I think it works really well. One thing I will say is that I do think that the middle portion of They Live is a little bit elongated where it doesn't really have that much going on. And so I kind of wish that there was something else that was happening in between the fight scene and then when Keith David actually, learns about the aliens. I just wish that there was something in between that kind of added a little bit more to the proceedings.
You get that. It's called Meg Foster.
Yeah, you know what, to be honest with you, I don't really care for her in this movie at all.
I think she's literally just there because we have to have a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Because I agree, her kind of participation in the film, unnecessary and kind of just adds in there's, a little romance here.
Right, and so it's sort of like a love interest or in a passion for Roddy Piper's character because there's that, it's kind of comical. She throws him out a window in that surprise defenestration scene, and then later on he sees her at the
yeets him out of the fucking window.
And then later on he sees her at the the group that has amassed to kind of take on the aliens, and he's basically drawn to her, and he's like, "Oh, hey," the tone has completely changed. She just threw you through a window, and you're basically eating out of her hand just to say hi to her. So it's kind of funny, and I don't think it's necessary to the movie. I think that it kind of extends stuff in a way that really doesn't necessarily need to be there. Except the movie's only 90 minutes as it is, so it needs something to keep it moving. But I don't know that Meg Foster's character is it.
No, I agree. I think it's not she's not bad. I just don't think it adds anything to the film. It's more just like this kind of feels like the studio said, well, you gotta have a love interest, and Carpenter's like, fine,
yeah.
all right, tack this in there.
So, one of the movie's most quotable lines is, "I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum." What do you think about that tagline? And then also, what have you seen that also uses that, or like kind of uses that and breaks it?
So I think a lot of people, because my entire life, outside of like when I first saw the film back in like college, I always thought of the line as, "I've come here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum." And that's not the line in the film. This film is one of the most misquoted films of all time. And you can blame Duke Nukem for that, because that's what Duke Nukem says in the Duke Nukem games.
And just thinking about it, it does make sense to have that reverse, as you said. The line is chew bubblegum and kick ass. You don't want to repeat the bubblegum twice in a row, and you kind of, like that, the misquoted line does that. And I think that that's probably why they didn't go that route. How do you feel about it though? Because it kind of comes out of nowhere.
That he just shows up to the bank and starts mowing them down.
Right, exactly.
See, it's like, I don't know if Carpenter's being very Marxian and like, we gotta tear down banks, or if it's just like he takes a shotgun, runs off, and decides to mow people down. I'm kind of more leaning towards, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt where I wouldn't give Romero the benefit of the doubt. Like, yeah, like maybe that is what he's going for. But at the same time, it's like,
it's kind of random. It's just,
it just ends up being random violence. It's well executed because the effects are great, like the blood splatters and all that. But and it's good. But I just think like, how many people are sitting there thinking like, okay, we're being controlled by this capitalist society. We just need to consume. Now he's at a bank shooting people. How many like laymen are sitting there going like, yeah, I get what's going on. Like,
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's not only that, but just like, I mean, the quote too, I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. It's that kind of comes out of nowhere as well. It's just like a random thing, but it's become that sort of quotable element from They Live.
They give him a lot of lines in the movie, like little one-liners, and your mileage is going to vary on them. Like, you look okay, but fuck you, it's like, okay, that's kind of, it's okay, but Roddy Piper's delivery on some of them, it's your mileage is totally going to vary on
how do you feel about his delivery when he's talking about his dad, who's kind of abused him in the past, and he's like, yeah, my dad used to be scared of him. He had a razor, he put it to my neck, and he started moving it back and forth. That's kind of like an intimate, scene. How do you think Roddy Piper does with that one?
I mean, it's out of nowhere. But I mean, like Roddy Piper though, I mean, he scripted that himself. I know from watching the Blu-ray commentary, Carpenter says the bubblegum line he came up with, and he just threw it in the film somewhere. He it was like a line that Piper scribbled down. He's like, oh, that's pretty cool. I gotta put that in the movie somewhere. And that's what happened. Like his lines just kind of vary, because sometimes he gets very actiony, Arnold Schwarzenegger, like Commando, like, hey Sully, know how I said I'd kill you last? I lied. Like he gets lines like that of like, but they're just like, they don't really hit because he's just like, he's wooden for half the film.
Right.
Like, I thought you were dead. Yeah, I thought I was dead too. And it's like you expect the Lethal Weapon music to start playing, like bam, 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 Murdoch's alive.
I'm glad you brought that up. What do you think about the soundtrack in this movie?
It's Blues Brothers 2000. John Carpenter with a synth and a harmonica. Like, it's like your own little spaghetti western. It's great. I like it a lot. It's not like super memorable, but it's very like, the harmonica really adds it, like it makes it for me, like,
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is, I wouldn't say this is probably one of Carpenter's better scores because it's not used that like a whole lot, in my opinion. But I do think that it does that nice melding of sort of like a, bluesy southern rock style soundtrack along with the synth score, which it doesn't sound like it should work, but it does. I think it works really well for what the movie is trying to do. And, I definitely think that there's been better Carpenter scores and Alan Howarth scores, but I think this one fitting with the theme of the movie does work really well. It's a interesting concept that it has there. And like you said, there is that element of spaghetti western there too. And to be fair, I wish I was just sitting by a fire railing on a harmonica with a can of beer, because looks like he's having a fun time. So.
You feel like the people at the camp would be like, as they're trying to sleep, and he's sitting there belting out Blues Traveler song, but shut the fuck up.
Yeah, right. Trying to go to bed. Yeah.
Trying to make some baked beans over here. I got you going.
Yeah, leave it to a movie to make baked beans look appetizing over a fire.
Well, they don't do that. I'm thinking of Dennis the Menace, but I think they get like a soft roll, some chicken, stew stuff, and some peas. And they're trying to get rid of those frozen peas. Yes. Like, you want more?
You want more? You want more? He's like, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
Everyone, they like come up like, hey, we're out of food. Okay. Do you want the peas though?
No. You look starving. You want the peas? No. Okay. I'd rather not.
Do I have to eat the peas? You have to eat the peas. Oh, shit.
What do you think about the towards the end? They're infiltrating this. They're basically having like an award ceremony about how much money they've raked in. And like, yeah, brought so much money in. Thanks for the help, guys. And then you've got the guy who
JD Vance.
you got
JD Vance now. They're like, come on, guys, look at all the money we're making.
Yeah, but the guy that they had at the homeless shelter, who they now see has basically kind of spruced himself up. He's got a suit on. He's like, guys, you want the full tour of the site? What do you think about that guy? Who's basically gone from nothing to something because he doesn't really care about what's going on.
Yeah. No, it's great because it's good. It's like the old punk question. This film needed like Henry Rollins in it. That's what they needed. It's never Piper. It needed Henry Rollins as not a, you're going to sell out? Never! Come on, we're selling out. But what if you make a lot of money? No, I'm not going to do that. What if we put you as a character, as a villain in Avatar, The Last Airbender, Legend of Korra? Fine, I'll take the money.
Yeah, I mean, I think it poses an interesting question to the viewer at the end of the movie, though, because again, if we're taking Roddy Piper as the everyman character or the stand-in for the audience, it's basically saying, what choice would you make? Would you want to be on the winning side?
Everyone, as Ted DiBiase, who was in the WWF at the time, as the $1 Million Man, everybody has a price. Everyone can get paid. What's that price to get you to do it?
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting concept. I like it a lot. I kind of like, again, obviously Nada makes a decision and we run with that, but it kind of leaves it open to the viewer to say, like, what would you do? Like, would you would you take it on, or would you just be like this guy who's just like, I'm gonna go along, get along, and I'm gonna make all my money, and I don't care about what happens to anybody else? Which is really interesting too, because I feel like Carpenter is definitely leading you on a course. He's saying, look at this guy. He came from nothing. He decided to turn his back on all these other homeless people and make his own money and, say to hell with everybody else. I don't really care what's happening. These fucking aliens, they can do whatever they want. I'm just making my stuff and I'm winning while the winning's good. And I definitely think that Carpenter's leading you on that sort of journey of seeing like, yeah, the American dream, yeah, maybe it used to be something, but it's not the same as what you're thinking. And here is where it leads. And again, there's definitely that Marxist tone as well of like, we need to dismantle this because it obviously doesn't work. It's nice. And like you said too, it's not exactly couched in a metaphor, right? Like, it's not like you're going to watch this movie and you're like, what did Carpenter mean by that? It's pretty
I think
explicit.
he really thinks you should buy shit. You should buy a lot of shit.
Yeah. I think like what he's saying is like, you should
buy more shit.
Follow all that stuff that it says on the subliminal messaging.
Yeah, just buy some more shit.
It's not implicit. It's definitely explicit, and it's not really couched in any metaphor. I think it's just kind of blatantly there. That I feel like some people might find that to be sort of a downside to the movie, is that Carpenter's theme is just like very out in the open, but I don't really think that. I think that They Live does a really good job with it and has an interesting enough, theme and an actual like film itself to make it so that you don't really care about that. And I also would find it interesting too to see like people who are very politically, right-sided. How do you feel about They Live? Like, do you just hate it? Is it just like, can't stand it?
Just killing aliens. That's all.
Yeah. Do you just not see? You see past the metaphor, the very blatant metaphor. You just like, I'm just gonna see it as a movie about Roddy Piper.
Well, to be fair, don't look somebody who's conservative that far, because there was people bitching about, Rage Against the Machine. I think it was like I can't remember what congressman or senator was like, Rage Against the Machine used to be so cool until they got political. And Tom Morell's like posting like, are you fucking kidding me? And, so don't give them that much of a benefit of the doubt.
I agree. All right. So on a scale of 0 to 10 unsatisfying sex scenes, what would you give They Live?
I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. I like the movie a lot. It's like the fourth time I've seen it. I saw it the first couple of times in college. I think it holds up pretty well. I think it's a lot of fun. I think the political commentary, a lot of fun. But then again, we're left leading here in the podcast. So it still holds up and still resonates. And it's, sad to watch today to see that we haven't progressed from that part of the 80s, and even in the Scream Factory Blu-ray that you lent to me, that's something Carpenter even says. He's like, the 80s may have come and gone, but they're still with us. We're still dealing with the 80s today. I do think it's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of great action and a lot of good gore too. We didn't talk about him that much. Keith David's great. Roddy Piper, I do think he does a good enough job. He's very serviceable. Wooden, but he is serviceable. He does have the look of the everyman working class that's downtrodden and beaten with his Canadian accent. But I do think he does a good enough job. He is charismatic enough. I think the plot's a lot of fun. I do think taking that idea of Reaganomics and attributing it to aliens, because you would have to be alien to believe this bullshit. It's fun enough. I do think it kind of dampens, though, especially today, the political messaging in it. But I do think it is a good and fun enough film. It's one of Carpenter's best. It's a lot of fun. And I think it's got enough going on to where I say it still holds up in the cultural zeitgeist. I do think it's one of Carpenter's better films. And I do think it's something that people still should be watching to this day because there's a lot to enjoy here. So 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I would agree. I would give this an 8.5 as well. I think it's a really fun movie. It's got a great message. Whether you agree with that or not is kind of beside the point. I think it works out really well. And not only that, but it has really resonated throughout. So, even throughout the zeitgeist, you really have a lot of They Live influence throughout, of just, obviously it is working a lot off of Invasion of the Body Snatchers too. But the idea that you kind of are seeing beings that are there that no one else recognizes is really prominent from They Live. And I think it's kind of worked its way into popular culture throughout. John Carpenter does a really great job directing this movie. It has a lot of excellent influences to it. That the whole idea of jumping between the color and then the black and white when you're seeing through the glasses or the contacts, it's a really fun piece to it that kind of gives it that 50s sci-fi feel. That John Carpenter obviously is worked off of, inspired by, inspired in his direction. And overall, it's a really great movie to just kind of watch, enjoy for the sci-fi element, a little bit of comedy here and there, a little bit of horror and gore, but also just overall just very fun. And I think that's part of the reason why they wanted Roddy Piper here too, is just have fun and maybe not take it as seriously as Carpenter could have done. So really great to see, and I think that revisiting it still has a lot of resonance today. So 8.5 out of 10 for me. All right. Anything else you want to add for our 300th episode, our anniversary, or whatever, however you want to call it?
I think that's it.
I think we did the thing.
We covered it all.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you for sticking with us for 300 episodes. And next time we will be back with Saxon Samhain, and we will be covering another Saxon horror movie from his canon. So you definitely want to stick around for that. We've got it all, so we won't be cutting away either. We'll be doing Saxon Samhain every week through Halloween. So definitely stick around for that. And then obviously we've got tons of other stuff lined up. We're gonna do obviously a Thanksgiving movie here coming up. We're gonna work into our Christmas stuff. I don't think we're doing sharing gifts again this year, but something for Christmas we'll do. So it's going to be a lot of fun on Blood and Microphone podcast here after 300 episodes. So thanks for sticking around. Hopefully you stick around for 300 more. We will be. If you want to subscribe to us or, leave us a nice review, we're on pretty much any podcast app you can think of. Just search for us on those and subscribe, leave us a nice review. That always helps us out. We're on Facebook and Twitter. Search for us on there. We have an email address, bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com, where you can write to us. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what movies you want us to watch, and we'll take that into consideration. Already done a couple listener requests. So, and also you can donate to us on our Patreon page or our Spotify page. Anything you donate goes back towards beer. So appreciate that in advance. Thanks for listening to our 300th episode of They Live. Go out and watch that for your Halloween season. And until next time,
take care. Happy 300.